Hello and welcome to my channel. Just a heads up, this is probably going to be a long video because I am going to try to leave it in real time and not speed it up just so that I can talk through how I created this triple tier pull-up card but without the Tonic die set that actually makes the base card. I bought this one, which is Look Who It Is 3-tier pull-up card die set, which is, I think, sort of more of a add-on, decoration die set that is a companion to the base card set. And it was on 50% off on Craft Stash not too long ago. And so I picked it up because I really love how fun it is. And it's a huge die set. It's got 30 dies in it. And what's really great is it has all of your numbers, which I love. I love alphabet and number dies. It has all the ordinals, so you can do, happy 15th birthday. And then it's got some other fun words and just a ton of matte dies to cut mats and layers. So really, really fun die set. But problem is that I don't actually have the base die set that cuts and lets you assemble the triple tier, pull-up card. So I figured out how to do it myself, and that's what I'm going to talk through in this video. So if you've never seen a triple tier or a 3-tier pull-up card, it looks a little something like this. And at the top you have a tab that you can pull, and then it just starts pulling out the nested tiers that are hidden within this bottommost layer. So really, really fun, super, exciting for somebody who gets this, because it just looks like, your plain old card, but then you pull it out and you have so much more that you can kind of decorate, add some hidden messages and whatnot. So what I'm going to talk through today is how I figured out how to make this triple tier card custom to this die set, and I'll give you dimensions specifically for the card that I have here. But I'm also going to talk through how I figured it out, so in case you have another die set that has fun mats and layers that you think will kind of Russian doll and nest, into each other, then you can apply the same methodology and create your own 3-tier pull-up custom to whatever you want and the aesthetic that you like. So I'm going to talk through a little bit about how this comes together, just in terms of the mechanics of it, and then I'll talk through dimensions. So I'm leaving, these are already pre-cut, but I'm leaving them as templates with this die set so that I don't forget how to do this in the future. So let me show you what you're going to need. We're going to end up cutting 5 pieces. I'm going to put this to the side. So we'll end up cutting 5 pieces, and they're gonna look a little something like this. And how this is put together is, let's say this is just your standard card base. We're gonna just need an extra panel with a little bit of a glue tab here. And what we'll do is we're going to glue this little panel inside our card base here. So this little panel here is where we're actually going to cut a slot. And this slot is going to be the pull tab mechanism. It's going to be the little channel that the nested section or card inside this is going to glide up and down. And so we're going to create this for the largest or the bottommost, and then the exact same thing we're going to do for the middle tier. So just your standard card base, whatever size card you want. Then cut an extra little panel with an extra 1/2 inch glue tab, and that's gonna nest right inside, and we'll close it up eventually like that. So that's our second tier. And then our third tier is just a regular panel. And so what I think might be optimal is, in terms of paper weight, I think I'm going to try today's with 80 pound. The first one I did was 65, which I think is pretty sturdy. And I do like how that turned out. I just want to try 80 pound to see if it feels a little bit better. This single panel here, you could probably do 110, 120 pound if you want this to be a little bit more sturdy. And I would definitely recommend that for this, but I don't think I would do over 100 pound weight card on these, because it does end up being 3 panels together. So you've got 3 panels here, you've got 3 here, and then another here. So it's going to end up being really, really thick. And I don't think you want these to be too heavyweight, because they have to sit inside one another. So if you remember, I showed you this little third panel with the glue tab that is going to be where we cut our slot. Well, this is going to just nestle right inside here. And then if I open this up, the third panel on the second tier, that's also going to have a little slot cut out of it. And our third tier is going to nestle inside that. So then all of these will get closed up, and you'll end up with something like that. So you're going to end up with something fairly thick, and that's why I don't think you want 100 pound, because or anything above 100 pound cardstock, because I think it's just going to get too thick in there. But I'm going to try 80 today and see how that works. So that's roughly the mechanics of it. So now let me talk about actual size and how I figured it out for this die set. What I did was wanted to see how large of a card I could make if I take the largest matte layer die, so this one, and that seemed very clearly for our bottommost layer. And keep in mind, this die set was designed to make a triple tier card, so I know I had to use this in some combination and it would all make sense. So I took the largest one, and then I took the largest one of this set of nested dies, and I assume that this is going to be for my second tier. So I went ahead and just die cut those from my decorative paper. And then, so if I have, you can see how that fits there. And then I figured out, okay, how much white do I want to show up? Let's take, for example, this first panel. Then I figured out, okay, well, how much white do I want to show around the border? And I'll go ahead and let me bring out some scratch paper. So I took my die cut it out, and then I've been adding 3/8 of an inch as my border, not all the way around, but in total. So then you end up with 3/16 of an inch all the way around. So if you're gonna make this size, that your card front ends up measuring 4 1/2 wide by 5 7/8 high. So that's essentially the size of our card front. This just this white panel here. And so I showed you for this bottommost, we need just our basic card base plus this extra little panel. So to make a card base that is this size, we want to double the width of this. So let's double that up. And then in total, we're going to end up with 9 inches by 5 7/8 high. Now, if you like, a wider border, if you like more of your white showing, then go ahead and adjust accordingly. So whatever matte layer, and if you have like a different die set that you want to use, you can customize it to that set of dies. But whatever your matte layer is, just add however much of a border you want to see around that matte layer. So that's the card base. So that's one piece. Now to make this piece, there's one thing I want to call special attention to, which I didn't earlier. This is actually, it has this extra 1/2 inch glue tab, but if I line up the fold here, which is where it would get attached, you can hopefully see that it doesn't go the full width of my panel. And the reason is because this sits inside. I just don't want, I want this to be able to close down nice and flat. If it went all the way to the same width of the panel, then it might bunch up this fold here and create extra bulk and not allow me to actually fold it down flat. So all I did was, for this panel, it's just 1/8 of an inch shy, but then I add 1/2 inch on this side as a glue tab. So effectively, what does that mean? Well, I'm going to add 1/2 inch to, if my panel is 4.5, I'm going to add 1/2 inch glue tab, so that's 5. But then I'm going to subtract 1/8 of an inch. So then I'm going to end up with a panel. My additional panel is going to be 4 7/8 by the same height. So 5 7/8. And we'll score at 1/2 inch. So that's our first 2 panels and the exact dimensions that I used for this card that I'm about to make. So then I did the exact same thing for tier number 2. So here's tier number 2. I took the largest matte layer in this set of nested square dies, and I figured out the exact same thing. So how much of a border do I want all around? And I tend to add just 3/8 of an inch to my matte layer. But again, that's purely subjective, right? So it can be whatever you find most aesthetically pleasing. But in my case, what that ends up being is I end up having my card base ends up being 4 1/8. And I know sometimes using 1/8 of an inch and 1/16 of an inch isn't so fun, but I'm just gonna share what I actually made, and that's why I'm talking through like how I arrived at these numbers, so you can actually adjust this to whatever works for you. So 4 1/8 is gonna be my card front for my second tier. And then we want to make our card base, so all we do is we just double the width of that. So we're going to end up with, I didn't leave myself enough room. So we're going to end up with 8 1/4 by 5 inches. So that's one piece, and then we're going to score it in half at 4 1/8. Then we need our third panel with the little glue flap here. And so how do we figure that one out? The exact same way. Take the dimension of our panel, 4 1/8. we're gonna add half and subtract 1/8. But in this case, it's easier to subtract the 1/8 first. In this case, it's easier to subtract 1/8 first because it's 4 and 1/8. So subtract 1/8, you get 4, add a half, so that's 4.5. So this panel I'm going to cut at 4.5 by 5. My heights are always going to be the same. And again, I'll score that at 1/2 inch. And my top tier, what I ended up using is the smallest matte layer in this set of 4. So I took the smallest matte layer here, and then I just added the border that I like. And so that piece for me ends up being 3.1/2 wide by 4 inches high. Okay, so I am going to actually make one of these. I'm not going to use my template because I need that. I need to keep that. So let me go ahead and start by, I'm going to use my We Are Memory Keepers all-in-one tool here. This is a recent purchase for me. Joann's was having just this fantastic sale on We Are punches and trimmers and just everything that from We Are Memory Keepers, and took it as an opportunity to buy this. And I've been playing with it, using it a lot. I'm working on a series of videos showing how to use it, but it'll be a while before I collect all of those up and edit it and everything, but be on the lookout for that if you're interested. Let me refer to my cheat sheet here so I know what I'm cutting. Okay, so I need one piece that's 9 by 5 7/8, and so 5 7/8. And you know what's really nice about this trimmer is that, well, this tool, because it's more than just a trimmer, all of the measurements up here, it does explicitly label every 1/8 of an inch. So 5 7/8 is really clearly marked. Okay, so 5 7/8 by 9. And then I'm gonna score this one at 4.5. So I'm just gonna go over at 4.5 and score. Look how handy that is. The fact that I can cut and then score right away, really nice. Okay, so I'll set that aside for now, and then my next piece is, I don't think I can get anything out of these, so I need another sheet. And I'm going to cut this piece, which is 8.25 by 5. So I know my sheet of paper is 8.5 this way, so I'll cut 5 going down. And then I'll cut 8.25. And I will score this at 4 1/8. Okay, I'll set that piece aside. Then from this piece left over, I can probably get, I think I can get this piece here, 5 7/8 by 4 7/8. So this should be 6 inches, so I can get the 5 7/8 from that. So let's get 4 7/8 this way. And I'm gonna have to score at 1/2 inch, so I may as well just do that now. And I need to trim this down to 5 7/8. Just gonna take a sliver. Okie dokie. Set that piece aside. So I've got those two. I have that one. then I have 2 more cuts I need to make. So from this piece, I can get my 3.5 by 4 from this. So let's get 4 and 3.5. Okay. All right, and my last piece, I just need 4.5 by 5. And let's see, do I have a scratch paper? I don't think I have anything big enough. Yeah, I'm gonna have to cut into another new sheet. 4.5 by 5. Okay, so 4.5 by 5. And along this 4.5, we do want to score it at 1/2 inch. So I did it without explaining, but all I did was flip over this just so that I can butt this up against this edge here so that I can score. The other ones I didn't really have to do that because I held on to my paper right after I cut it, so I knew it was exact. Okay, so that is all of my scoring and cutting. Alright, so I don't need this anymore. Let me bring all of my pieces in. So this is the top tier card base and our third little pull tab panel. That's what I'll call it. Then second tier card base, pull tab panel, and then our third tier. So all I'm going to do now is then just fold all of my score lines and burnish with a bone folder. And then on the panels that have the little glue tabs, I'll just go ahead and miter these corners. So I'm just going to take just a little triangle out from the corners, and that just ensures that when you go to glue this down, you know, if things weren't 100% the right size, none of your glue tab is going to get be visible from the outside. Just neatens up everything a little bit. Okay, so we've got all of our pieces here. I like to try to keep them all together and organized. Okay, so the next thing that I want to do is now figure out where to cut my slot for the actual pull tab mechanism. Now I happen to have a couple different die sets that are pull tab mechanisms. So this one is from LDRS. It's one that I got off of HSN. But you'll find a lot of different ones out there. Here's the actual one that I used because it has a pretty long, but this is pretty long too. So I like the long pull tab so that you can use it on various size cards. But basically what you're looking for is all these mechanisms work very similarly in that they have a die or maybe a set of dies of different lengths that cut this little channel or a little slot. And then they have a die that will cut out a pull tab mechanism. And I've already got This is using my other die set, but you can see it's pretty much the same as the LDRS one. So there's that. And then usually it's got, this has it too, but it's just under here, a little belly band that's a bit of a stabilizer. I'll show you how that works in a bit. A little circle, which also serves a bit as a stabilizer, your pull tab, and then you need your slots. So they all work very similarly, and so here's how I figured out where to cut the slot. And again, I'm going to talk through how I figured it out so that if you need to customize this for a different die set, then you could definitely do that. And I'm going to pull out my dies here. So our mechanism is actually going to get cut into that little panel that has the glue tab. So I'm going to call this, our pull tab panel, because it's where our pull tab is going to get cut into. The way that I determined this was I figured it out, and it worked on the first try, even though it was a little bit, I was actually a little surprised that it worked on the first try. But essentially, what I was aiming for was, I knew what I wanted was for this matte layer to be hidden inside the lower panel by about 1/4 of an inch. That way you don't create a catch point where it could be hard for it to slide back in. So I started with essentially that size, and I added a little bit extra. And this is something that I forgot to mention when I talked about the dimensions for the second panel here. So you can see I've got my layer here, but then I've got an extra inch at the bottom, and that is so that this can still sit inside of the panel below it. And very similarly, this was an important point that I forgot to mention, the topmost panel, the same thing. I just added, in this case, I didn't need quite as much. I just added about 3/4 of an inch. So that's important, because you do want to make sure that all of these layers slide very comfortably and nest into one another. So what I arrived at was, if I take my pull tab panel for my bottommost layer, so this is going to be my largest panel here, what I want to do is make sure that my slot is cut out of the middle of what's going to be my card front. But remember, this panel is 1/8 of an inch shy of the full width of the panel. The full width of our panel, let me set all of this aside. The full width of our largest panel is actually 4.5 wide. So I want to find the halfway point of that, and it's going to be 2 1/4. So what I'm going to do is, this is going to get attached like this. So where our glue tab is, that's going to be flush lined up with one edge of our card panel. So I'm going to measure 2 1/4 from this edge, and that's going to put me at the center of my card panel. So I'm not measuring the middle of my pull tab panel. I'm measuring half the width of my card panel, but from the folded edge. So let me go ahead and do that now. So 2 1/4. Give myself a little bit of a tick mark there. And now I want to kind of draw where I want my pull tab to cut. So for this card, I decided I want starting 3/4 of an inch from the top. I want to go down, but to figure out how far down, I actually took my card front, that's going to be the second tier, because when it's completely closed, I want the second tier to be flush with the top of my first tier. So I actually want this pull tab to be such that this can go all that far down. So I'm going to take it all the way down to 4 3/4. So we'll cut our slit from starting 3/4 of an inch from the top, and we're going to go all the way down to 4 3/4. And if you look here, that's about 1/4 of an inch shy from the very bottom of our card here, because we need something, we need our pull tab to have some room to attach to. So this is going to be down here. So it'll just attach to the bottom of our card there. Okay. So that's the pull tab for our largest panel. And I'm going to do something similar for the pull tab on the second largest panel. So again, working with the panel that has the glue tab, I want to draw a line that's going to be the center of my card blank. So in this case, my card blank is 4 1/8 wide. And I want to measure that from the folded edge. So I need to go in 2 1/16, because that's half of 4 1/8. And I'm going to bring my third panel here just so that you can see. Again, I'm going to start at 3/4 of an inch down. And I'm going to go until I'm about 1/4 of an inch shy of the bottom of my third panel, the third tier here. That happens to be 3 3/4. So I'm drawing a line starting 3/4 of an inch down, extending that line all the way until I hit 3 3/4. And that is where I want to cut my pull tab. Now, if it helps, I would label top and top, just to give some extra little notes to yourself as you're putting this together. Okay, so now we need to go ahead and die cut that. So my set of pull tab dies has 3 different lengths of pull tab or slot cutters, and none of them are truly long enough to do it. This is too long for my short one, so I'll use it on my long one, and I'll use the next longest. And I can feed these through my die cutting machine at the same time, but I definitely want to put a little bit of low tack tape down, just to make sure that this does not move on me. And what I'm actually doing is, so you know how your dies have these little holes that you can kind of poke the cardstock through that gets stuck inside the die? I'm looking through that hole and make sure I can see my line. And that's how I know that my die is going to be right centered on my line. So gonna add that there. Run that through, and then I'll have to end up doing this twice so that I can cut, because it's not gonna cut the full length, so I'm gonna have to run it through a second time to get that. But I have a large platform die cutting machine, so I can at least get both of these panels cut at the same time, and that should kind of speed things up a little bit. So let me go ahead and run these through. Okay, so all you have to do to cut the rest of this is just shift your die down a little bit. You want to make sure to poke out this little piece. And if you want, you can use a shorter die if you really want, but I find it helpful to use the same one because I can kind of get it inside the previously cut slot and just sort of make sure that it's going to be a full extension of that. And I just need to slide this down until it kind of hits the end of my pencil mark. So then I know that this is exactly lined up with the top portion of the slot. And I'll do the same on this one. All the slots are the same width, so if you did really want, you could just use the smaller slot. It'll lock in as well. You just don't have as much length to work with. So just make sure kind of nestles into the previous slot, and once it's in there, you'll be able to feel it because it'll slide back and forth really smoothly. And then I'm just gonna slide it down until I get roughly to the end of my line, and then I'll go ahead and die cut. Okay, so we've got these cut, so we have our slots now. And now it's just a matter of putting this all together. And I am prepping this card base for some birthday cards that I'm making, and I plan on using the Tonic Sweet Sorbet craft kit. So what I'll do most likely is, I'll link to that video so that if you're interested to see, because I'm not going to complete the card, I'm just going to show you the card base put together. So I'll link to the video where I actually do complete the card, and in that video, I'll probably speed this one up and kind of voice over it. But I really wanted to keep this in real time just so that you can really see it come together and I can explain it in more depth. So I believe we have all of our pieces, and now all I need to do is start assembling. So what I'm going to do is I would totally recommend, however you're going to decorate your card, consider doing that now before you put your mechanism and everything together. Because while everything is separate and you can lay everything flat, it's going to be a lot easier to burnish, all of your pieces down and really get everything to stick nicely. But for the sake of being able to put together the entire card base, I'm just going to put everything together and then I'll decorate after the fact. But I definitely recommend, if you were doing this for reals, then decorate first. Okay, so I've got our the largest, so this is our bottommost tier. This is the card base. This is my pull tab panel, which now is very obvious because it not only has that little glue tab that we mitered the corners of, but it's also got a slot down the center. I have top written here, so I know that's going to go up like this. I like for the glue tab to be in the front because the next tier is going to actually sit in front of your slot. So by having this extra glue tab here, it just makes more space for that second tier. Whereas this back panel, when I glue this down to my pull tab panel, it can actually sit pretty flush and there's no real extra room. But if I just pinch this, you can kind of see how just having that extra flap creates this extra space, which is where we're going to nest our second tier. So we want where this is folded, that's going to be our front. So let's add our pull tab mechanism. For each pull tab, you need the actual pull tab itself, a little belly band, and a little circle. And Lawn Fun has the Let's Toast pull tab. I showed you the DRS one. Heffy Doodle has one. So there are a lot out there, and I think they pretty much all are assembled in the same way. What you want to do is fold kind of a zigzag this circular portion. So I'm folding in and then folding back. So you're going to end up with something like that. Pinch your two circle halves together so that you can slip the circle halves through to the front. So the long length of paper here, that's on the back. Just the little circle halves should be all you see from the front. So once those are in, what you want to do, I like to use liquid glue so that it's nice and strong and permanent. I'm just going to put a little bit of glue on both halves of the circle. You don't need a lot. You don't want it to ooze everywhere. Take your little circle die cut and just put that right over top. So now that becomes one strong piece, and that is nice and tacky. Make sure every time I work with interactive cards, I always test my mechanisms often, especially after I glue any element down anywhere near my glue, anything that has to move, because if you got glue unintentionally anywhere that is causing some stickiness or gumming up the works, your best chance of fixing that is right after you put that glue down, so you can actually wipe it or powder over it to dry that out. So everything's moving pretty smooth. Okay, I decided to just zoom in a little bit so that you can see a little bit more closely what I'm doing here. Here's where we left off. We did put the little circle onto the front of our pull tab. And normally, if I were making this as a straight pull tab, I would double this up or cut this out of 110 pound. But this actual pull tab part is not what we're going to use to pull our nested cards up. So it's okay that this isn't thick cardstock and that it's not doubled up. So it's okay how it is right now. Now, the next little piece you'll need is the little belly band, and this is cut and scored, so you just want to fold along the score lines. And it's really convenient to have to use a die set that will cut out all of these pieces, because this is cut so that it perfectly wraps around your pull tab. And it's the perfect size. It gives it just enough wiggle room so that it can slide, your pull tab can slide through here smoothly. And the whole point of it is to actually just create a little channel so that, see how if I pull this, I can actually move my pull tab quite a lot. There's a lot of wiggle there. What this little belly band gives us is the ability to wrap it around our pull tab and then glue it to our panel here, and that creates a little slot or a little channel that ensures that this pull tab is just going to go straight up and down. There's not going to be any wonkiness at all. But we do want to make sure that we get that attached in the right spot. And here's why I started the slot 3/4 of an inch from the top. That's because I wanted enough room to fit this little belly band. I know I didn't mention that up front, but I figured it would make more sense once you see the context of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm on the back side of our pull tab panel here. So the side that has the longer length of the pull tab, and I'm just going to put a little bit of glue on that middle section of our belly band. That's going to go down, get glued down onto the panel. But what I want to do is just make sure that it's in the right spot, and how I'm going to ensure that it's in the right spot is this pull tab has a 90-degree angle, right? So I want to take my pull tab and line it up in the corner of my grid line here. And then I want to make sure, I'm going to put a finger there. And I also want to make sure that my panel isn't wonky. So I don't want to glue it down with my panel like this. I want to glue it down so that my panel is also at a 90-degree. But then how do I know? If this is flush in one of those corners, then all I need to do is just look for a spot. You can pull this up and down. It doesn't really matter where it's at. Just pull it down so that you can line it straight up with one of your grid lines. The top of the panel is lined up straight with one of the grid lines. So once all of that's down in place, then I'm just going to I'm going to hold on to my panel, and I'm going to hold on to the bottom of my pull tab. Here's my belly band. I've already got glue on the middle section. I'm just going to slide this behind my pull tab and stick it down to my card near the top. I'm going to lift this up. See? It's above my slot, but below the top of the card. And my, there's, enough enough space on both sides. And the liquid glue is nice. You've got a little bit of time to wiggle it around, adjust it if you need. But now we know that everything's nice and squared up, so everything will pull straight. I'm going to give this a nice push and burnish that down. And then once it's in place, you just need to wrap the belly band around your pull tab. Put a little bit of glue on the glue tab here, and attach that, and burnish that down. Okay, and now just continue to test, make sure you didn't get glue anywhere. But see how now I can't wiggle this back and forth the way I was able to before, because it's always just going to move within this belly band. So it's created a nice little channel for my pull tab to slide. Okay, so I'm going to do that exact same thing. This was my my largest tier, my bottommost tier. Now I'm going to take my middle tier, and that's this one. I'm going to take the pull tab panel, the fold, remember the fold where our glue tab is, that's going to be the front, because we want the extra room in the front, which is where our third tier is going to get attached. And I'm going to go through this whole pull tab again, so that if it was confusing the first time, then you can see it the second time, and hopefully it'll clear things up. This is the pull tab mechanism. I'm going to first bend these up, and then there's another score line. I'm just going to bend that back so that you get a little bit of a zigzag like that. Then I'll go ahead and pinch the two circle halves together from the back side of our panel, slot those circles right through to the front being where our tab is folding over. And go ahead and put a little bit of liquid glue. Take your little circle die cut and place that right over top. Give it a good burnish. Just want to make sure we can still pull this. Don't worry that you have so much of the pull tab showing. We'll take care of that. Okay, so flip this whole panel to the back side. Get your little belly band and fold that along the score lines. I'm going to go ahead and apply my glue now. And it's liquid glue, so it can, if you actually put it down and then let it start drying a little bit, it'll just get tacky and it'll stick even faster once you get it down onto your paper. So pull tab, I'm going to take just one of the corners. I like to work from the upper right. I'm going to line that up with a corner on my grid line. Hold that down. I'm going to slide my panel to where I can get the top of the panel straight and lined up across this way with one of my grid lines. And so once that looks good, I'm going to hold it from the panel and the pull tab from the bottom here, just so that I can get my little belly band and put that behind my pull tab. And I'm going to adhere that to the front. Make sure that my pull tab is sitting in between the two score lines. And once it's on there where I want, I'm gonna give it a good burnish. Okay. Once it's burnished, then I'll lay my pull tab right in the middle there. Put a little bit of glue on the glue tab and close up the belly band. Give that a good burnish too. And now I'm gonna test, make sure everything slides. All right. So this is why you want, if you were only using this as a regular pull tab, you would want something strong or thicker cardstock so that this doesn't bend on you. But don't worry that it's bending. It's just there really so that we can get this moving straight up and down our slot. Because we're going to attach something else to make it actually pull. Alright, so that is it for the pull tabs. So, the other thing I want to go ahead and create for myself is this little circle, because that's what we're going to hold to actually pull our tab up from. And for that, I'm just going to use a 1 1/4 inch punch. And just take some scrap here. And I'll go ahead and, since I don't know how I'm going to decorate, on the back here, I put purple, but since I don't know how I'm going to decorate this, I'll just leave it for now. We'll worry about that later. So we've got that, and I think we can start putting everything together now. Okay, so here is our bottommost card base, our pull tab panel. I'm going to start by attaching these two together. I'm just going to put some glue down this stretch here. And I'm going to use liquid glue because it's nice and strong. We definitely want everything to stay in place. Okay. And this should line up flush with the edge, and then fold it down. Just make sure that everything lines up at the bottom here, everything lines up at the top, that the sides line up, and you can open this once it's all in place and give it a really good burnish. Okay, so now we have something that looks like that. And even though I don't think this will cause a catch point because it's running parallel to the motion, I'm still going to put some Scotch tape along this edge, just in case we add something decorative that might get hung up on this little ledge here. Because anytime you have 2 layers of paper attached like this, that could become a potential catch point, and by putting some Scotch tape over it, you just smooth out that transition between the 2 levels of cardstock. Less likely that this is actually going to be a catch point because, again, the motion is going this way, which is the same direction as this. If you had 2 layers of cardstock like this, something could get snagged on this, but I'm just doing this just out of an abundance of caution. Probably not necessary. So that is pretty much assembled, and I'm going to do the exact same thing for our second tier. So you can see a lot of repeated steps here, but that's what makes it actually a lot easier than what it might seem, because it's a lot of the same steps just repeated. So I'm gonna go ahead and line up this so that it's flush, the fold is flush with the edge, and then close this down and make sure that when it's closed, everything lines up nice and neat, top and bottom. And I'll burnish this. So you can see, because these edges were mitered, we don't have to worry about it being flush with our paper here, because you're just not going to see it at all. It'll be completely behind the front of the card, so you don't have to worry about that. That's the reason I like mitering my corners. And again, just probably not necessary, but gonna do it anyway because Scotch tape is not expensive and you can't do it after the fact, so I'd rather just do it now. This one that I showed, this was the first time I was making one of these, so once I get these fully decorated and I can see more clearly what is gonna get put on top of it, I may, when I make these more, because I'm liking them a lot, I may skip that step if I really find that it's unnecessary, but for now I don't mind taking that extra step. Okay, so we've got all of our panels now. We've got our biggest, bottommost, our middle tier, and then our very top. So now we have to put them together. So I'm gonna open this up, and if it helps you keep things straight, because it helps me often, remember the circle, where that circle is, that's our front. Just gonna write front here. No one's gonna see that. That's gonna fold inside of our card base, and this then is the front, and I'm gonna write that right in the middle because I'm probably gonna put a mat here and you won't see that. So that's the front. So that means that when I attach my second piece, let's go ahead and label this in the exact same way. Our circle, that's the front. Fold that in so you can still see that's the front. Then that makes this the front. Go ahead and write that. Oops. Front. Okay. So then when we go to attach this, we want to make sure that all of our fronts are going to be visible. So what I want to do is attach my middle tier to my bottom tier, but to do that I need to fully close up my middle tier. Well, I can't close my middle tier until I've got my topmost tier attached to it. So when you go to assemble this, you're going to actually assemble it from the innermost panel to and then work your way down. So how do we start? Take your pull tab mechanism and push it all the way down, as far down as it will go. Okay, so once it's there, I'm gonna put some glue on, just on the circle. This is my third tier, my topmost tier, and I'm going to line up the top of the panel with the top of my card base here. I'm just going to try to get that nice and centered. Because when it's all the way closed, I don't want anything showing except for this pull tab, which we'll add at the end. But you can see all of my tiers fit all the way inside. So when this is all the way at the bottom, I don't want it visible at all. That's just a design aesthetic. If you wanted a little bit of it showing, just attach it so that a little bit of this tier is above the top of your second tier or your middle tier. But so that's the aesthetic I'm going for. And again, I put glue down, so I just want to make sure this can still slide up and down, which it can, so everything's all good. Okay, now I can close this and I can go ahead and close the back of this middle tier. Just close that right up. And when you're applying adhesive here, just steer clear of the pull tab mechanism, but otherwise you can put adhesive all the way around. So I'm going to go ahead and put double-sided adhesive as close to this edge as I can, because I really want to make sure that it is nice and stuck down as close to this edge as possible. Keep in mind this is a little bit shorter than the full width, so that it's well clear of this fold line here. And that means we'll be able to, that's going to be able to fold down completely. So I've got adhesive entirely along the two sides and the bottom. At the top, I want this to be closed too. I just don't want it to be too close to my pull tab mechanism. So I'm going to go close to the top, about maybe an eighth an inch or so away, maybe a little bit more than an eighth, away from the pull tab mechanism. If you want, you can put a little bit of glue here too, or adhesive. But I think this is going to be enough to hold that down pretty well. And I'll go ahead and burnish. I'll still be able to decorate these panels, even though everything's going to be already closed up, but it's just going to be a little bit harder is all. But that's okay. I'd rather be able to show you the entire process than to say, well, then close it up. I'm not going to do it, but you can. So hopefully by being able to see the full thing, it'll make a little bit more sense. But as I mentioned, you definitely want to decorate at least to this point, I think, because if you get it to this point, you're really just going to decorate what's visible, and that's going to be a lot easier than kind of slipping this panel under, because that's what I'm going to have to do, is slip it under here. Okay, so I've got my adhesive. I'm just going to hold this so that it's flat down with the bottom, it's all lined up, and then I'll just press this closed. So burnish where I know I have adhesive. And there we go. So that's all closed, and we've got our middle and our top tier done. So front, I can read both fronts. I'm going to do the exact same thing. Now before I attach this, I'm going to go ahead and cut down this glue tab, because we don't actually need it. What's going to pull this up, this is the tab from the very top tier. this is going to be the tab that pulls everything. So it's going to pull the inside tier. When this inside tier reaches the top of the middle tier, that's going to become the pull tab for moving this up. So I don't really need this tab here. So I'm just going to trim off that little bit of excess, and it's easier to trim while it's open. So I leave it to now to trim, because while I'm doing everything else, I like to have that to still be able to pull and test my mechanism. But once I attach this, I can test the mechanism by pulling on this tab. And I basically want to do the same thing as before. So with the circle all the way at the bottom, which is in the closed position, I'm going to take my middle, which already has our nested top tier, and again, I like to have it so that it's flush at the top. So I'm gonna line everything up flush at the top and press down. Hold that, just press down, make sure that makes really good contact with your pull tab mechanism, and still gonna test it out, pull it, make sure that it's sliding pretty okay, which it is. It's not completely dry yet, but definitely want to still be testing it, make sure I didn't get glue anywhere I didn't want. And if you do end up getting glue somewhere that it shouldn't be, you can always from the back side, try to wipe or put some powder, any static powder or baby powder, that might help to just remove any stickiness that shouldn't be there. But there we have that. So now I can do the exact same thing, flipping it over to the back side. This is the back of our pull tab panel. Then I can put adhesive on here and close up the back. So, same thing. Full length of both sides, all the way across the bottom. And when we put adhesive at the top, you just want to be well clear of your pull tab mechanism. Just dry adhesive is a lot easier to control in terms of where it's going. With liquid adhesive, once you burnish it, there's the potential it kind of spreads and oozes out beyond where you placed it, so that can be a little bit more challenging, but you could definitely use a liquid adhesive if you want, or a combination of the two. I just think I have enough adhesive here to keep this nice and closed, so it should be more than enough to hold. And once it's closed, there's not going to be any tugging or pulling on it, so I don't think I need that extra strength or permanency of a liquid adhesive. Okay, so let me go ahead and close that. Okay, so I'm gonna hold down, make sure it's all flush at the bottom, and then just close this down right over top and burnish. Okay, so now we've got, I'll hold it this way so you can see our triple tier card base. So what do you do with this front here? This extra flap. So here's what I did on mine. And this is the only thing that I'm going to show but not actually do, because the order really matters in terms of aesthetics. So if you look here, I want my matte layer to go down first. Well, maybe I can put my matte layer over it. Yeah, alright, I'll actually do it. Now, okay, so what I'm gonna do is just glue this circle to both my topmost tier and to this pull tab. But what I want to do is I want to try to level up this pull tab. So I'm gonna cut off a little bit because it's longer than it needs to be. But I'm gonna cut off enough so that I can actually fold this down so that it's 2 thicknesses of paper. Because right now it's sitting behind this panel. So by adding, by folding it, it's going to bring it flush with the panel. And then when I stick it down, this circular piece is going to be nice and flush, and you won't have that extra ridge where there's a difference in card thickness. So what I'm going to do is sort of line this up, figure out or mark the top here, and then that's where that pencil mark is, where the top of my circle is gonna go. I'm just gonna cut a little bit extra, just about double. Could be a little bit less than that, because then I'm gonna fold this down so it doubles that up. So now that it's doubled up, this is flush now, and I'm gonna burnish. Nice and flush. Make sure it's not overlapping. This is overlapping a smidge, so I'm gonna just trim a little bit off. And then I'm gonna glue this flap down so that this all becomes one piece. Okay. So that is nice and flush. Okay. Alright, and then I can glue my circle tab right over top of that. So I'm gonna put glue here on the tab that's sticking up, and a little bit of glue along the bottom of my circle die cut. Just eyeballing the center. Kind of flip it to the back if you want to really center it up, if that makes it easier. But I'm hiding that glue tab. Now I'll give this a good burnish. Okay. So there we have our pull tab, and I'll just do the back in white also, so that I can show you that. So I'm going to punch the same size, and what I'm going to do is hold it up to line up my 2 circles, and I want to just go ahead and mark right at where the top of my card is, because we don't want this extra little bit here, because that could be a catch point on our card. So I'm going to cut off this bottom portion so that all that's left is what's going to be visible and what's going to sit outside the card. So let me go ahead and trim that off. So here's the card completely closed. So I'm just gonna put that right there. And it just hides this little glue tab. It makes it, see how it makes it a little bit more nice and finished and clean. And get a little bit of glue on here. So you can see you're going to have something pretty thick and substantial to hold on to and pull. So there you have it. Your triple tier pull-up card that is we figured out how to do it from scratch. It's completely custom to the die set. Now, the one thing that is a little bit, if it bothers you, then there is a way around it. But in that middle tier, we do have this extra pull tab. It's not in the way of anything, but it doesn't get attached to anything either. So it is just flopping about here. Technically, if you didn't want to use the pull tab, what you could do is not use the full tab, but instead, just cut like a little portion off of the back, and then, just not have this showing. So you could do that if you wanted, but that means that you're not using, you won't have something to thread through that little belly band, which is what's keeping this moving like relatively straight up and down. And I rather like having it slide up and down easily, as opposed to it potentially going a little sideways. So that's why I've left that there. It's not in the way of anything. It's not visible, unless they turn it to the back. But I think it's okay if I figure out in the course of things how to hide that a little bit better. Then I'll do that. I mean, you could, I guess just off the top of my head, you could put a decorative panel. Let's just use this piece of paper behind here. So, you could just put a decorative panel behind here, but only put, let me just use a smaller panel like this, but only put glue, on both sides so that you don't see that. So that's possible if it really bothers you, but it doesn't bother me a ton, at least not right now. So that is our 3-tiered pull tab card base done. And if you catch my separate video on my how I use the craft kit, I think it's number 41, but it's called Sweet Sorbet. Then you'll see how I end up decorating both of these cards, because I'll use both card blanks and make 2 different style cards, or at least I'll decorate them differently. So that's it for this video. I hope that this wasn't too confusing, but if you do have any questions, please do leave a comment and I'll try to clarify. I know a lot of my videos, I go through a lot of the math and how I figure these things out, but that's mainly so that if you want to customize it to what you happen to have in your craft room or to the aesthetic that you prefer, maybe you like a smaller border, maybe you like a larger white border around your mats, you then have the information that you need for how to change the dimensions, and that way you're not stuck to the specific dimensions that I happen to like or that I happen to use because I have this particular die set. So hopefully by doing it that way, you are armed with a little bit more knowledge and can run with it, but I know that that has the potential to be a little bit more confusing. So definitely let me know if you have any questions or if there's anything that I can clarify, and I will try to do that. If I need to, I'll make a separate video to address those particular questions. Thank you so much for watching, and until my next video, happy crafting and have a fantastic day. Bye.